place. I I
We're in
think.
Yadayim Dalad
Oh, no,
base.
no, I didn't. I got it. I'm sorry. I got it. I'm fine. I did the wrong thing. Okay. We are a dollar base. On that day, they said all sacrificial offerings that were slaughtered for a designation other than their own are valid, but nay are now credited to the owner as fulfillment of his obligations, except for the Pesach and Katas offering. The Pesach offering in its proper time and the Katas offering at all times. Reb Eliezer says also the Asham offering. The Pesach offering in its proper time and the Katos and Asham offerings at all times. Reb Shimon ben Azai said, I have a tradition received from the 72 elders on the day that they appointed Reb Elazar ben Azariah as head of the yeshiva, that all sacrifices that are eaten that were slaughtered for a designation other than their own are valid, but they are not credited to the owner as fulfillment of his obligation, except for the Pesach and Katas offerings. But Azai added only the Ola offering, but the Kama did not concur with him. On the day that they said, what is the law regarding Ammon and Moab in the seventh year, Reb Tarfon decreed Maisa Ani, but Reb Eliezer ben Azariah decreed Maisa Sheni. Reb Yishmael said, Elazar ben Azariah, you must demonstrate a proof, since you rule stringently, for whoever rules stringently must demonstrate a proof. Reb Elazar ben Azariah said to him, my brother Yishmael, I have not deviated from the order of the years. It is Tarfon, my brother, who has deviated, and he must demonstrate a proof. Reb Tarfon responded, Yabrut. Egypt is outside the land of Eretz Israel, and Ammon and Moab are outside the land of Eretz Israel. Just as in Egypt, Maisa Ani is separated in the seventh year, so too in Ammon and Moab, Maisa Ani must be separated in the seventh year. Rav Elazar ben Zariah responded, Babylonia is outside the land of Eretz Israel, and Ammon and Moab are outside the land of Eretz Israel. Just as in Babylonia, Maisa Sheni is separated in the seventh year, so too in Ammon and Moab, Maisa Sheni must be separated in the seventh year. Reb Tarfon said, regarding Egypt, which is nearby to Eretz Israel, they instituted Maisa Ani so that the poor of Israel might be sustained by it in the seventh year. So too regarding Ammon and Moab, which are also nearby to Eretz Israel, let us institute Maisa Ani so that the poor of Israel might be sustained by them in the seventh year. Rabbi Elazar ben Zariah said to Reb Tarfon, behold, it is as if you are benefiting them monetarily, but actually you are causing loss of lives, for you are restraining the heavens from letting fall dew and rain. Letting fall dew and rain, as it says, should a man steal from God as you steal from me? And you say, how have we stolen from you? By withholding the tithes and the truma. Rabbi Yeshua said, behold, I shall act as a respondent on behalf of Tarfon, my brother, but not with regard to his words. Regarding Egypt, it is now a new act, but regarding Babylonia, it is an old act, and the issue before us is also a new act. A new act should be judged from another new act, but a new act should not be judged from an old act. Furthermore, the tithing obligation in Egypt is an act of the elders, but in Babylonia it is an act of the prophets. And the issue before us is also an act of the elders. An act of the elders should be judged from another act of the elders, but an act of the elders should not be judged from an act of the prophets. They were counted and they resolved that as regards to Ammon and Moab, one should separate Maasani in the seventh year. When Rosabin, the son of Damascus, came to Reb Eliezer in the town of Lod, Reb Eliezer said to him, what new lesson did you learn? Have you learned today in the house of study? He answered them, they were counted and they resolved that as regards Ammon and Moab, one should give Maasani in the seventh year. Reb Eliezer wept and said, the secret of God is with those who fear him, and he will inform them of his covenant. Go and tell them, do not be concerned about your count. I have a tradition received from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who heard it from his teacher, and his teacher heard it from his teacher, and so on until the halakha received by Moses Mount Sinai that regarded Moab and Olive, one should separate Maasani in the seventh year. On that day, Yehuda, an Ammonite convert, came and stood before them in the house of study. He said to them, what is my status with regard to entering into the Jewish congregation? Rabbi Gamil said to him, you are forbidden. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, you are permitted. Rabbi Gamil said to you, Rabbi Yeshua, Scripture says an Ammonite or Moabite may not enter into God's congregation, even in a 10th generation. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, but are the Ammonites and Moabites in their places? Long ago, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, came up and mixed up all the nations that has said, I have removed the boundaries of peoples and have plundered their treasures and have brought down dwellers in strongholds. Rabbi Gamil said to him, but Scripture states, but afterwards I will return the captivity of the children of Ammon, and they have already returned. Yeshua is the head, but Scripture says, I will return the captivity of my people Israel, and they have not yet returned. They permitted him to enter into the Jewish congregation. Okay.
Okay. Hey, Targum Sheb Ezra Sheb Daniel. So when in the Sefer of Ezra and Sefer of Daniel, a lot, if not most, of the text is actually written in Aramaic rather than in Hebrew.
Right.
Okay. And that is part of the canonized text, and therefore that's Matame Yadayim, and therefore also your hands become tame from it. There, by the way, there's a whole section in Gemara Megillah where we talk about the what's Matame Yadayim, and Matame Yadayim is like a badge of honor. If it
Ah,
makes your hands tame, that's your badge of honor because that means that it's a proper holy text. Okay. Targum shekasavo ivris. However, if you took some of that Targum from Ezra or Daniel and wrote it out in Hebrew, the ivris shekasavo Targum, um, or Hebrew from anywhere in Tanakh that was written out in Aramaic, Ukasav Ivri, or even if it was written not using our script that we use in Sifrei Torah and in scrolls is called Assyrian.
ah,
Ksav Ivri is actually an old script which is not what we use for it. So the Ksav Ivri Eino Matamis Hayadayim. So any of these cases are not considered sanctified and they do not make your hands tame. Leolam Eino Matame. The only way that a scroll can be matami your hands is Ajir Tzavenu Ashuris. It's got to be written in Ashuris font. Okay. Al Ha'or Ubadio. It has to be written on parchment and with ink. Okay. Omrim Tzedukim. So the Tzedukim come with a complaint. The Tzedukim were people who didn't believe in Torah Shebal Peh, and they came with complaints against the Prushim. Right? We're the Prushim.
yeah.
Okay. Koblim anu aleichem Prushim. We have a dispute with you. Shatem omrim kisvei hakodesh metamim es hayadayim. You say that holy writings make your hands tameh. V'sifrei Homeras ena metamim es hayadayim. But the books of Homer, I think Homerus, it could be, there are other opinions about who Homerus is, but it could well be the Greek philosopher Homer.
Um,
Okay. Einam mitzamim v'sayadayim. Those things don't make your hands tame. So what are you saying? Are you saying that the books of Homer are better than Sifrei Kodesh because they don't make your hands tame? Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has a simple answer back to them. V'chi al ein lanu ala prushim ela zo bilvad. Is this the only thing you got against us? Harei heim omrim atzmos chamor tahorim. They also say the bones of a donkey are tahor. V'atzmos Yochanan Kohen Gadol tameim. But the bones of the high priest are tamei because that is the halacha. Okay, for a donkey flesh to be tamei, there has to be a kazayas of flesh, not bone. Okay. So the Tzaddikim say, no, well, that's different. Amru lanu, amru lo, lefi chibasan hi tumasan. No, it's just because of their dearness to us that we say that they're tame. Why? Shelo yase adam atzmos aviv ve'imo tarvados. So that he shouldn't use his father and mother's bones to make spoons or whatever other implements, which is kind of a weird reason because that's not actually the reason. Uh, but okay, if you come to the same conclusion as we do, we'll let it rest at that. Amar lehem, so says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Af kisvei kodesh lefi chibasan hitumasan. So this is for the same reason. You can see the same thing. He says, V'sifrei hameras she'enan chavim and enan metzamin yadayim. So you see that because they are so dear to us, we said them metzamin your hands. But okay, and this is an argument about nothing because this is not even the reason, and it's not the reason given by the Tzaddikim is not the reason for Tum, and the reason given back by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not the reason either. He's just throwing them a bone to go away and stop bothering him.
oh, leave him alone. Yeah.
Okay. And uh, here we have a similar argument over here, although this one's a little bit more credible. There could be a little bit more to it. Says in Mishnah Zayin, Omrim Tzedukim Kovlim alanu aleichem prushim. We've got another dispute with you. Shatem metaher mesanitzok, because you are metaher water that's being poured from a jug that goes into a tame kli. Even though the water is forming an unbroken stream back into the original vessel, the water that's in the original vessel remains tahor. Omrim Prushim, Koblion Anu Alechem Tzedukim. Okay, well, we got a dispute with you then. She'atem metarim es amas hamayim haba mibeis hakvaros. Because if there's a stream of water, a river flowing through a cemetery, um, that you call it tahor, which it is actually. But they're trying to make the point that just because you have an unbroken stream doesn't make it tame. It's amas hamayim haba mibeis hakvaros. Omrim Tzedukim. Okay, fine. We'll drop that point. Kovlin anu aleichem proshim she'an atem omrim shori v'chamori she'ziku chayabin. Because you say that my ox or my donkey that caused damage, I'm chayav to pay for them. Va'avdi va'amasi she'ziku paturin. But if my slave does damage, then I don't have to pay for it. Ma'im shori v'chamori she'eni chayav b'hem b'mitzvos. I don't have to force my donkey and my ox to do mitzvahs. But I am chayav for damaging them. Avdi v'amasi she'ani chayav b'hem mitzvahs. I do have to do mitzvahs on them. For example, he has to do mitzvahs milah, and they're not allowed to do work on Shabbos. These I'm chayav on all of these things with my slave. Enodin she'yeh chayav b'nizkan. Should I not also be chayav for the damages that they do? Amr lahim, so the Persian replied, Lo im amartim b'shori v'chamori she'en b'hem das. These are creatures that have no intention, have
No das.
no das. Okay, right, I don't need to translate. Tomru avdi v'amasi sheyesh b'hem das. Should I say that about them because they've got their own consciousness, they've got their own free will? She'im aknitem. If I do something that they don't like, and they know, oh, if I do any damage, my master's gonna have to pay for it. They can go and do some damage deliberately, and I'm gonna have to pay for the damage that they do. No. That stays on the Eved. So when he's freed one day, he's gonna have to pay for it. And then, okay. And we've got one more Mishnah in Yadayim tomorrow, after which we start Uktzim.
Uktzim, okay. Um,
That is the final Maseches of Shas. By the way, I'm gonna make a Simchas Beis HaShoev in my house on Monday night of Sukkot.
Oh, very nice.
We're gonna make the siyum there.
Oh, okay. All right. That's the first day of Kol Hamoed?
No. It's like almost the last night of Chol Hamoed, second last night of Chol Hamoed.
26th, I think we said. That Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Daled base. A woman who is a Tevel Yom may knead a dough, and she separates challah and sets it aside and places it on an Egyptian tray or on a plank. And she brings the tray or plank close and orally designates the piece of dough as challah, because the dough is a shlishi, and shlishi is sahor in the case of kulin. Regarding a kneading bowl that is Tevel Yom, we may knead a dough in and separate challah from it, and she brings the piece close to and orally designates it. It is challah, because the dough is a shlishi, and shlishi is a tahor in the case of kulin. Regarding the pitcher that is Tevel Yom that one fills from a barrel of Maisa, that is Tevel. If he said, this wine shall be Truma Maisa after dark, it is Trumas Maisa. If he said, this wine shall be an Erev, it has said nothing. That the barrel breaks, the wine is in the pitcher remains Tevel, and the pitcher breaks the wine and the barrel remains Tevel. Okay. We are on to Makshir. Okay, Beis Yud. Regarding second year produce that was greater than the produce of the third year, and produce of the third year that was greater than the produce of the fourth year, and produce of the fourth year that was greater than the produce of the fifth year, and produce of the fifth year that was greater than the produce of the sixth year, and produce of the sixth year that was greater than the produce of the seventh year, and produce of the seventh year that was greater than the produce of the year following the seventh year, we follow the majority. If half the produce is from one year and half is from another year, we rule stringently. Regarding a sack that is filled with produce, is one placed on the riverbank or over the opening of a cistern or on the steps of a cave, and the produce absorb water. All the produce that absorb water is included in the law of water is placed. If Reb Yehuda says all the produce that faces the water is included in the law of the water is placed, and all the produce that does not face the water is not included in the law of water is placed. Regarding a barrel that is full of produce and it was placed into liquid, or a barrel full of liquid that was placed into produce, and the produce absorbed liquid, all the produce that absorbed liquid is included in the law of water is placed. And they said that this with regard to these liquids, with regard to wine, water, and vinegar, but with regard to all the other liquids, the produce is tahor. Then the Kemya says rules that legumes, tahor, and the legumes do not absorb. All right. Okay. The test. The mitzvah of Azov is 3 sprigs in which there are 3 stalks. But Yehuda says the 3 sprigs of 3. The Azov is that has 3 sprigs. He separates it and binds it. If he separated but did not bind it, or bound it but did not separate it, or neither separated or bound it, it's valid. Rabbi Yossi says the mitzvah of Azov is 3 sprigs in which there are 3 stalks, and its remainder are 2, and its stubs are any amount. Hyssop, which is short, one lengthens with thread and a spindle, and dips the hyssop and raises it, and grasps the hyssop and sprinkles. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon say, just as the sprinkling is done with the hyssop, so too the dipping is done with the hyssop. One sprinkled and uncertain whether he came from the thread or from the spindle or from the stalk, his sprinkling is invalid. One sprinkled on 2 utensils, and it is uncertain whether he sprinkled on both of them, or the cotton's water drew from one utensil to the other, his sprinkling is invalid. A needle which is placed on a shard of earthenware and one sprinkled on it, and is uncertain whether he sprinkled on the needle or whether it dripped from the shard of earthenware onto it, his sprinkling is invalid. A glass flask whose mouth is narrow, one dips and raises in the usual manner. Rabbi Yehuda says the first sprinkling. Katos water that was less than one dips in the tips of the stalks and sprinkles, provided that he does not soak up. And one intended to sprinkle in front of him, and he sprinkled behind him, and he sprinkled in front of him, and sprinkling is invalid. In front of, I skipped the page.
Mm.
Oh, I'm sorry. His sprinkling is invalid. In front of him, and he sprinkled to the sides in front of him, the sprinkling is valid. We sprinkle on one person with his consent and without his consent. We sprinkle on a person and on utensils, even if there is 100. There are 100.
Okay, that's it. Okay, curry sauce.
Okay. Vav Zion. If one sets aside the katos and dies, his son may not bring it after him. If he may not bring it after, he may not bring it from one sin to another, even if it was set aside for Caleb and that he has eaten yesterday. He may not bring it for the Caleb of the ate today, for it is stated his offering. For his son, that's for a sin that his offering shall be his sin. For funds consecrated for a ewe lamb, we may bring a she-goat. For funds consecrated for a she-goat, we may bring a ewe lamb. For funds consecrated for a ewe lamb, or a she-goat, we may bring turtle doves or young pigeons. From funds consecrated for turtle doves or young pigeons, we may bring 1/10 of an ephah. How so? If he set aside money for a ewe lamb or a she-goat and then became poor, he may bring birds. If he still had power, he may bring 1/10 of an ephah. If he set aside money for 1/10 of an ephah, he then became prosperous, and he must bring birds. If he became still more prosperous, he must bring a ewe lamb or a she-goat. And if he set aside a ewe lamb or a she-goat and it developed a blemish, if he wishes, he may bring birds from their proceeds. And if he set aside a bird and it became blemished, he may not bring it for proceeds, 1/10 of an ephah or a bird of no redemption. Reb Shimon says, everywhere lambs are mentioned before goats, I would think that this is because they are preferable to them. Therefore, Scripture says, if he brings a lamb for a katos, it teaches us that both are equal. And everywhere turtle doves are mentioned before young pigeons, I would think that this is because they are preferable to them. Therefore, Scripture says, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a katos, and this teaches us that both are equal. Everywhere the father is mentioned at the mother, before the mother, I would think the father's honor exceeds the mother's honor. Therefore, Scripture states, every man shall fear his mother and his father. This teaches us that both are equal. But the sages say everywhere the father takes precedence to the mother because both he and his mother are obligated to honor his father. And so with the study of Torah, if the son gained much while sitting before the teacher, he precedes the father in all matters because both he and his father are obligated to his honor. Okay.
Okay, Hadran Allah Maseches Krisos.
Now we're going to have Mila.
And next up is Meila.
Aleph. Kodesh and Goshen that are slaughtered in the sea.
Wait, no, that was 3
We're
Mishna.
finished, right?
Yeah.
So that's for Sunday. Okay. All right. Mila.
Well, tomorrow. You're gonna do it tomorrow, right?
Oh yeah, you'll do tomorrow. Get to Sunday with. Although he pays him, he is not forgiven for it until he seeks forgiveness from him. That is said, but now return the wife. But now, from where do we know that one who forgives should not be cruel? It is said, and Abraham prayed to God, and Abraham healed Abimelech. If one says, blind my eye, cut off my hand, break my leg, he is liable on condition to be exempt. He is liable. Tear my clothes, bear my bug, he is liable on condition to be exempt. He is exempt. To do this to so and so on condition that you exempt, he is liable whether against his body or against his property. If one steals wood and makes it into utensils, or wool makes it into garments, he pays at the time of the robbery. If one steals a pregnant cow and it calves, you blade bearing wool, and he shears it, he pays the value of the cow ready to calve, or the value of the ewe ready to be shorn. If one steals a cow and it becomes impregnated while with him, and he calves or a ewe, and it becomes laden with wool while with him, and he shears it, he pays the time of the robbery. And this is the general rule: a robbers pay as at the time of the robbery. If one steals an animal and it ages, or slaves that they age, he pays at the time of the robbery. The mayor says, in the case of slaves, you may say to him, "Here is your property before you." If he steals a coin and cracks fruit and it rots, or wine and it sours, he pays at the time of the robbery. If he steals a coin and becomes disqualified truma, it becomes ritually contaminated, chametz, and it is in possession on Pesach, or an animal, and it is used for transgression, or becomes disqualified for the altar, or is condemned to be stoned, you may say to him, "Here is your property before you." One who finds the tefillin should bring them in pair by pair. Rabbi Gilman says two by two. What do these words apply to? Old ones, but not to new ones. To the new ones, he is exempt. If he found them tied in pairs of bundles, he must wait near them until dark and to bring them in. But in a time of danger, he may cover them and leave. Reb Shimon says, he hands them to a friend, and his friend to his friend, until he makes it to the other animal's courtyard. So too his child he hands to his friend, and his friend to his friend, even if they are 100. Reb Yehuda says a person may hand a barrel to his friend, and his friend to his friend, even beyond the techum. They said to him, this should not go further than the feet of its owners. If one was reading a book of scripture on the threshold and the book rolls from his hand, he may roll it to himself. He was reading on top of the roof, and a book rolled from his hand. As long as it has not reached within 10 fists of the ground, he may roll it to himself. Once it has reached 10 tefachim, he should turn it over on its writing. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if it is only moved from the ground by the width of a needle, he may roll it to himself. Rabbi Shimon says, even on the very ground, he may roll it to himself, and no rabbinically prohibited matter may stand in the way of holy scriptures.
Okay, that's it. And I gotta run. Goodbye.
Have a great Shabbos.
And a good
Be well.
Shabbos.
It's Sunday. Thank you.